welcome to the Actual Tech Media EcoCast. My name is Jess, and I am excited to be here with you all today. But before we jump into our content, I have some basic information that I want to cover with you. All right, let's kick off our day here today by taking a quick tour of your audience console. And we're going to start with the questions window. So if you haven't already said hi, there is a whole audience of cool humans out there, so reach out and give a wave to the other members of the Actual Tech Media community. Now, keep in mind that if you do have any technical issues today, a browser refresh is going to fix just about anything. But if those tech gremlins are clinging on today, no problem. Just throw a comment in the question section and our crew will be there to help. We also want this to be an informative webinar for you, so throughout today's EcoCast, we hope you'll get engaged and ask all your burning questions. Not only will we have team members responding to you over a live chat, we will also have a dedicated Q&A session at the end of our presentations. Now, if we don't get to your question during the live webinar today, don't worry, because the awesome experts that we have here with us will be following up after we wrap. All right, next up, there's going to be lots of cool aha moments on the EcoCast today. And if you want to share those with your community, we've made it nice and easy for you. You can use the Twitter button right there in your audience console, and the hashtag for today's EcoCast will be automatically added to your post. All right, our last stop on this guided tour, be sure to check out the handouts tab for some awesome resources and takeaways from our speakers here today. We have an info pack collection, solution briefs, white papers, data sheets, free trials, ebooks, upcoming webinars, and more. So many great resources, so be sure to go explore. Now, if that wasn't enough fun, we also have some exciting prizes that we'll be giving away throughout today's EcoCast. I'm going to tell you a bit more about those later on, but a few quick reminders for you all. First, you do need to be here live in attendance at the EcoCast in order to qualify to win a prize, and we will follow up with all of you after we wrap. Now, all winners must submit an IRS Form W-9 to Actual Tech Media, and all winners must meet the Actual Tech Media prize terms and conditions. Now, if you don't know what those full T's and C's are, that's fine. We've got the full thing for you. Just head on over to that handouts tab, click in, scroll down to the bottom, and you'll find them waiting for you there. Now, the absolute most important thing to remember is that we love getting all your insightful questions during these live webinars. In fact, we love it so much that we actually have a special additional prize for all you inquisitive folks out there. So in today's EcoCast, we will be giving away a prize for the best question asked in each of our live sessions. Now, the expert speakers and teams will review all questions asked after we wrap the webinar, which means that even if your question does not get read out in a live session, there is still a chance to win. If you are a lucky winner here today and you would like to donate the value of your prize, we have several wonderful organizations that we partner with. So let us know when we follow up about your big win, and we'll get that rolling for you. Again, we are so happy to have you all here with us live at the EcoCast today, and we want to keep that good feeling going, so let's connect on social media. Reach out and connect with Actual Tech Media on Twitter and on LinkedIn. We have lots of great content, and we always want to hear from you. Now, if you're looking for more awesome content and resources right after we wrap the EcoCast today, be sure to subscribe to the Actual Tech Media channel on YouTube. Another fun way to win a prize and, hey, grow this awesome community is to refer an industry friend or a coworker to the Actual Tech Media webinar series. Now, you'll find a link to do that right in your handouts tab, and you will also be automatically redirected at the end of the webinar. And both you and your coworker or friend could win a prize, and we hold those drawings every month. So be sure to refer a friend because, it could quite literally be a win-win situation. Next, we have a cool opportunity for all the decision makers out there to get connected with new and emerging tech and innovative vendors. Here's how it works. All you need to do is click on the link in your handouts tab, fill out a quick application, and the Actual Tech crew will then match you with some vendors that we think you should probably be chatting with based on your needs. There will also be fun opportunities that you get to choose to join in, like surveys, test runs, new solutions, extended demos, and so on. You'll get some chances to win extra prizes, you'll chat with great people, and you'll learn about the hottest new trends in tech. So be sure to apply, or hey, send that link to a decision maker on your team. Now, I want to take a quick minute here to remind you all about one of my favorite resources, and that is ransomware.org. You can find out everything you need to know about ransomware, how to prepare, prevent, and recover. This site is jam-packed with information, helpful tips, checklists, strategic approaches, case studies, everything you need in one place. So wherever you are in your ransomware preparedness journey, there is something for you at ransomware.org. Go check it out and start exploring. All right, I have one more exciting resource I have to tell you about today, and that is the Gorilla Guide Book Club. It's going to give you access to free enterprise IT books authored by top industry experts, so you can stay up to date on trending enterprise technology. And yes, these books will work on your Kindle, your mobile device, and as I said, they are completely free. You can download these awesome resources at gorilla.guide, and there's a link for you in that handouts tab as well. All right, well, we have covered a lot of important things already, and I don't know about you all, but I am excited to dive in. So let's get going.
All right, well, hi, hello, and it is time to jump into the good stuff because today we are talking about implementing API security and doing it before it's too late. I am so excited to get into this conversation with all of you today because APIs are absolutely vital to our digital ecosystems, right? They're enabling that growth, that scalability, those enhanced opportunities. They're breaking down silos. They're doing all of this across our organizations, but they also pose a significant security risk and they are drastically expanding our attack surfaces. So today we are going to get ahead of those threat actors, and together with the help of some top experts from Rubrik and Progress Software, we will get into all the details, those best practices, and those innovative solutions that will help you ensure that your APIs are compliant and secure. And that's what we want, right? We want that peace of mind. This is going to be such a fun day. I cannot wait to get started. So we're going to get the ball rolling pretty quickly here and move things along. Again, my name is Jess Steinbach. I'm a moderator here at Actual Tech Media, and my friends and fellow moderators, Scott Becker is here with us on live chat. Also, Keith Ward waiting in the wings for a keynote. Plus, we have a special treat. Our brand new moderator, Mackenzie Pudisi, is here with us, not only on live chat, but he also might be joining us to say hi for the very first time. You might be the first audience to get to listen to the wonderful Mackenzie Pudisi later on, so stay tuned for that. All right, and if we need any more reasons to be excited, prizes. Today on the EcoCast, you could win one of three $300 Amazon gift cards. We will be giving those away to three lucky winners who are here live and present with us at the EcoCast. Now, as I mentioned in the housekeeping chat this morning, you can find the full T's and C's linked in that handouts tab if you have any questions about that. All right, well, that was all we had to go through at the start, which means it is time to kick things off. I am very excited to introduce our keynote speaker, who really needs no introduction because, as you can see, we are starting our day out today with my fellow moderator here at Actual Tech Media, the one and only Keith Ward. Keith, I love any day that I get to start out with you, my friend, and I know that today will be no exception. So, Keith, take it away.
Happy 2024, everyone, and welcome to this EcoCast about API security. I'm Keith Ward, one of the moderators here at Actual Tech Media, and I wanted to kick this event off by scaring you a bit. How am I going to do that? By showing you that your APIs might not be as secure as you think, giving the bad guys new openings. But first, let's set the table. Application programming interfaces, or APIs, are perhaps the key to modern software development. The days of monolithic development, where a program was built and tested over a time frame of months or years, and all functionality was contained within the program, and you had maybe a release a year, maybe a release every 6 months, every 2 years, or something like that. Now, those days aren't over, but they're no longer the standard. I think that's fair to say. Now it's all about cloud native or cloud first development, driven by the mini programs of microservices that all work together. These programs are developed much more quickly and iteratively than ever before, as time to market is now a key metric for companies, even when it comes to development. Now, APIs are sets of rules and protocols that allow different software applications to communicate and share data with each other. They enable the integration of various services and functionalities, and as such have become a massive target for cyber criminals. That means that securing them is crucial and hard. All those moving parts make it a huge challenge to properly secure APIs. And with the rise of securing those APIs has come a similar increase in myths surrounding the best ways to do just that. So, here are 5 misconceptions about API security. It's worth asking as you listen if you're falling into any of these traps. So, let's get started. Misconception number 1, assuming HTTPS is enough. So, do you think that using HTTPS alone will secure or will ensure that your APIs are secure? If so, you need to think again. While HTTPS does encrypt the data in transit, it's just one part of the security puzzle. Other security measures, like authentication and authorization mechanisms, are crucial to keeping the barbarians behind the gate. Misconception number 2, overlooking authentication. Do you think that as long as an API endpoint isn't publicly exposed, authentication is somehow less important? Wrong. In reality, proper authentication techniques like multi-factor authentication, API keys, and OAuth tokens are vital to ensuring that only authorized users or applications can access the API and its resources, including its crown jewels, the data. Misconception number 3, ignoring or minimizing rate limiting. Do you ignore or otherwise minimize the importance of rate limiting? If so, you are surely setting yourself up for trouble. Without proper rate limiting measures, APIs are vulnerable to abuse through brute force attacks, denial of service attempts, and other similar types of attacks. Implementing rate limiting helps control the number of requests from a single source, preventing abuse and ensuring fair usage. Misconception number 4, not prioritizing input validation. Do you assume that input validation is only necessary for web applications and therefore just kind of unimportant for API security? Strangle that assumption right now if you do, because failing to validate and sanitize input can lead to various serious security vulnerabilities like injection attacks, and they can also compromise the integrity and security of the API itself. And that brings us to the final misconception, number 5, believing that security is a one-time task. Now, this is probably the most serious, in my opinion, the worst thing you can do and the most severe failure, the most serious misconception on this list. This comes with the mindset of kind of set it and forget it, believing that implementing security measures once is enough to keep an API secure for the long haul. Just don't do this, okay? In the same way that development never ends and development happens quickly, the security model here needs to be just as quick to keep up with everything. Remember that APIs need regular assessments, updates, and monitoring to adapt to these evolving threats. Things change super fast in the cloud first development world, as we've talked about, right? CI/CD pipelines. I mean, some companies iterate on a weekly basis. They're always bringing out new software, and this breaks things, right? We all know this. Things break when you're doing these kinds of iterations. When you're regularly releasing software so fast, things go wrong much more quickly than they do in the monolithic world. This is good in many cases. In some cases, it's bad, and you have to regularly track and respond to these changes at all times. You have to keep up. You have to stay on top of this. It is simply not optional anymore. If you do it one time and you just kind of sit back and think, well, that's all I need to do. If you don't have time, well, it's going to come back to bite you, I promise. So there you have it. 5 common misconceptions about API security. Now, today you're going to go a lot deeper than just this keynote, but hopefully this helps clarify some of the issues for you today. And to close out, I have a question for you, Jess, and it is this. How many New Year's resolutions have you broken already? For me, I'm feeling pretty good about saying that I've only broken one so far this year. Now, of course, I've only made one. What can I say? Here's to my 2025 New Year's resolutions. Maybe I will be able to hang on to those and be faithful a little bit longer. How about yourself, Jess? And with that, have a great show, Jess, and everyone who's attending today. I'll see you next time.
Keith, that's just mean. Okay, so genuinely, I forgot to make a New Year's resolution this year. I did. I forgot to make a New Year's resolution. So I've broken zero. I've broken zero resolutions because I have zero, and that feels okay for me. I'm on board with that. I'm gonna take a quick step back from the poll that's up on the screen here because you all already know this question. But here's something you didn't know. We have a special guest on the mic right now, and I mentioned Mr. Mackenzie Pudici earlier, our brand new moderator here at Actual Tech Media. And you all are going to be the very first audience to get to connect with Mackenzie live in an event. Mackenzie, thank you for joining us.
Hello. Thank you. I'm so excited to be here and live on the mic, Jess.
Now, Mackenzie has many cool and interesting hobbies that you will all get to hear about as you get to know our new teammate here. But I'm going to focus in on one today because, as you can hear, I'm a little under the weather. And so I'm sitting here sipping my tea. And Mackenzie is a tea sommelier, tea expert. What's the right term?
Good question. So I'm not a tea sommelier yet, but that is what I'm studying towards. So historically, each tea producing country wasn't too concerned with the culture outside of their own borders. So this tea sommelier program, it's kind of a global approach to tea that was created in North America, very much emulates the way wine sommeliers study.
Which Mackenzie also is, by the way. But for today, since it's a little early in the morning, we're going to focus on the tea and not the wine. We'll come back to that in another event. But Mackenzie, important tea question for you. For those of us that are in need of a little bit of a soothing tea break today, what is the best tea pairing with API security?
Okay, I've not yet had to pair tea and security softwares yet, but thinking about API security and the idea of protection, I figured I should suggest a tea which has high vitamin C. So typically green teas have a very high vitamin C count, and that'll keep all of our immune systems fortified. So I'm going to suggest Dragonwell green tea, which comes from the village of Longjing, which actually means Dragonwell in China. Apparently the tea was so good that one of the ancient emperors tried it there and blessed the 18 tea trees around their local temple. And those leaves today are still being grown and get auctioned off every year. And their cost is higher than their weight in gold. But the regular Longjing at the store is a lot cheaper, so don't worry.
I was going to say, okay, a costly afternoon for everyone, but a good all right. Well, Mackenzie, thank you so much for that hot tip, literal hot tip. And thanks for joining here. We're going to chat with you again later, so we'll bring you back out. But we're gonna keep things moving right along because we've got some EcoCast to kick off here.
I'm looking forward to it.
Alrighty. Well, I hope you guys all have your teacups ready. I certainly do not have a gold worth tea in my cup right now, but I am ready, locked and loaded, and excited to get into our EcoCast. And as you can see, we are kicking things off on a great note here. I love when we get to start our day with the Rubric crew. Always a fun time. Our first expert presenters here to start us out are Mike Preston, Technical Marketing Architect, and Jake Robinson, Application Solutions Architect. All right, Mike and Jake, we are going to get things rolling on the EcoCast here today. Pretty excited to start out with you all, and I know you got a lot of great info to cover, so I'm going to hand things over to you. Take it away.
My name is Jake Robinson, and welcome to Automate and Secure Everything with Rubric APIs. Now, Mike and I could probably sit here and nerd out over APIs for a couple hours, but today we really wanted to show you some great examples of how our customers are using APIs. Mike, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself and talk about our agenda.
Thanks, Jake. First, a little bit about myself. I'm Mike Preston. I'm part of the technical marketing team here at Rubric. I've been here for roughly 4 years now, and prior to that sat in the customer space, so I completely understand the challenges that our customers face as it pertains to building out automation within their environments. So, what are we going to show you today? Well, over the next 30 minutes or so, you'll gain an understanding of the Rubrik API landscape and the ecosystem it supports. We'll go over our API first approach and talk about all of the integrations and advantages that come with it. Then we'll get into the exciting part, the demos. We have a number of exciting and interesting use cases to show off just how powerful the Rubrik APIs are, from reporting on your infrastructure to a self-healing data center, and how to automate the creation of an isolated environment to facilitate functionality such as backup validation. We have a demo to show you. Finally, we'll leave you with a number of tips and tricks on how you can get started consuming and leveraging the power of Rubrik APIs yourself. So, we're here today because Rubrik made a decision on day 0, before a product was even available, to provide an API-first architecture. Each and every feature we release has a hard requirement that an API must be available to perform that process. This is why you see complete API coverage across all of our products and services, from on-premises deployments of Rubrik CDM, along with coverage for our SaaS-based services like ransomware investigation and sensitive data discovery. So by ensuring every function, every click, every single process that you perform within the Rubrik UI simply calls an underlying API endpoint, this basically makes us customer zero of our own APIs. But, and this is the key point, it's not just our UI that consumes these APIs. All of our endpoints are 100% open and publicly available to consume with your tool of choice. If you want to use PowerShell to manage your Rubrik cluster, go ahead. Want to integrate data protection into your Terraform plans? No problem. Need to make a mass change to SLA domains assignments with Ansible? The possibilities are really endless. But since we can't go over endless possibilities in 30 minutes, let's go over the main ways our customers actually leverage our Rubrik APIs. Jake, do you want to walk us through a couple?
First is our integration with IT automation suites. Through integration with ServiceNow, you can automatically create incidents based on failed backups, give power to your users to perform tasks like creating their own on-demand snapshots or live mounting a database, and even report on SLA membership using your CMDB. Integration with other IT automation suites such as Morpheus or vRealize Automation will also give you a self-service capability for data protection tasks, improving your operational efficiency and lowering time to recovery. Integration with configuration management tools such as Ansible allows us to simplify large deployments through bootstrapping an entire Rubrik cluster and even keeping standard configurations for our SLAs, hosts, and installing Rubrik Backup Service. You can also operationalize common ad hoc tasks using playbooks to do common tasks such as on-demand snapshots and live mounts of VMs or databases.
So thirdly here, we have centralized monitoring and reporting. Being able to pull out information from your Rubrik cluster into existing monitoring tools such as Splunk can be invaluable when it comes to troubleshooting. Or being able to generate documentation that covers off all of the configurations within your Rubrik cluster can be really beneficial in the event of a misconfiguration. Fourthly, we have automating IT processes and operations at scale. This is probably the most well-known use case for automation. Being able to automate and orchestrate the deployment, management, and configuration of hundreds or thousands of applications and objects across data center and cloud not only saves you valuable time, but frees up organizational resources to focus on more revenue-generating activities and drastically reduces the risk of error. And fifth, we have building new services on top of Rubrik. Some of our customers have built their own management consoles for certain processes that they need to perform within Rubrik, or have built integrations into pre-existing custom portals they may have had. And our SDKs make this really easy to achieve without having to know the ins and outs of Rubrik APIs. And for the most part, we've done a bunch of the heavy lifting for you. These are just a handful of the pre-built integrations we have, but there are many, many more available. We have our SDKs supporting languages such as PowerShell, Python, and Go. So if you're an expert in a specific language and just want to hit the ground running, go ahead, download an SDK, and you're on your way. But maybe you're not comfortable with a programming language like Python, but you live inside Ansible every day. This is where our integrations can help you. We provide plugins and modules integrating with those new and hot automation tool sets like Ansible and Terraform. And we also have support for various orchestration platforms like CloudBolt, CloudFormation, and Azure ARM templates if that's where you spend most of your time. And on top of all this, we also provide a number of use cases complete with documentation and quick start guides that give you step-by-step instructions to solve specific problems. For instance, we have our Roxy use case, which walks you through how to set up a chatbot using AWS's Lex and Lambda services, which will allow you to grab information directly from your Rubrik cluster within IM programs like Slack or Microsoft Teams. The main thing to remember is you don't have to be an expert in order to leverage Rubrik APIs. You don't have to be a programmer. We have many integrations that allow you to use your tool of choice. So with that, let's jump into the fun part and start showing off some of the demos. We'll start with the as-built report. So what is the as-built report? Essentially, it's a configuration document framework which uses PowerShell to produce as-built documentation. It does this across multiple different vendors and outputs into multiple different formats. So a little bit about some of the features that it has. Number one, you can generate your report output in multiple different formats like Microsoft Word or HTML or text. You can apply your own custom formatting so you can style it to your company's colors and fonts and styles. You could tailor the report basically by different detail levels of sections. So within Rubrik, we'll see that you can have more detailed information on your SLA domains, but maybe less detailed information on the cluster settings itself. There's other things such as health checks, which highlight different configuration issues, and you can go ahead and attach and send these reports via email as well. So in order to generate these reports, it's pretty simple. There's 4 steps here. You open a PowerShell console, install the vendor modules, install the as-built report module, and run the new as-built report commandlet. Pretty simple. So with that, let's actually take a look at the as-built report demo in action.
All right, so let's start off and take a quick look at those 2 config files that we talked about earlier. First, we have the global configuration. This contains information that will apply globally to all of your reports that you generate, regardless of the vendor or module that you're using. So here we enter things like our company name, email information, author information, and different global configurations that we want to apply across all the reports. Next, we have our Rubrik-specific report configuration. Here we specify configurations that control whether or not we show the logos, table of contents, captions, and different formatting options. This is also where we control the level of detail that we want to output within the report. And we can control this for each section of the report. So here you can see I can change the cluster level of detail to 5. I can actually turn off the SLA domain detail so it won't report on it at all. And we can do the same for our protected objects and snapshot retentions as well. So to actually generate the report, it's one commandlet. Here we have the new as-built report commandlet, and we pass it the report type, which is Rubrik. We specify portrait for the orientation, and we also provide the FQDN to our Rubrik cluster along with credentials to log in. This is also where we control things like the output format, the output folder for the report, and of course, input the 2 configuration files that we just went through. So it's that simple, one commandlet. And as we kick this off, we can see it's going through and grabbing a bunch of information around our cluster settings, our backup sources, our SLA domains, etc. Through some video magic here, we've generated the report, and it looks like it took less than a minute to generate our level 1 detailed report. So let's go have a look at it. If we look at our table of contents here, we can see there are a number of configurations that it's documented for us. Taking a look at cluster settings, we can see it gathered a total of 4 items. So some very basic information, as this is just the first level of detail. The same holds true if we scroll down and take a look at SLA domains. We could basically see we've gathered the SLA name, its base frequency, and an object count of how many objects it's assigned to it, as well as some very basic archival and replication settings. So let's compare that to the most detailed level of report. Again, we'll start here at our cluster settings, and now we can see we're gathering quite a bit more information around our cluster. If we head back to the SLA domain section as we did before, we could see we have a lot more information now. Each SLA domain is broken out into its own subsection. So not only do we have the generic information around the SLA domain name and object count, but we get more details on the actual frequencies of when we're taking backups. We also go into a lot more detail on the protected objects, splitting it out into object type, as well as listing out the exact names of the workloads and applications that are assigned to that SLA domain. So that's essentially it. There really isn't a whole lot to demo. Basically, you import the modules, set up a couple of configuration files, and run one commandlet. This makes it very easy to schedule and ensure that you always have that up-to-date build documentation for your Rubrik cluster.
All right, so I hope you see some of the benefits of the as-built report, but if not, let me round some up for you. Number one, it makes documentation not suck as much. Nobody likes to produce documentation, and with the as-built report, we can completely automate some of this stuff so you always have the most up-to-date build documentation on hand. So now, I'm going to pass it off to Jake, who has another exciting demo to show us.
Thanks, Mike. Imagine with me that overnight you've been hacked. Ransomware has been installed on a few of your most critical systems. It's possible that some of us in this room or even watching don't even have to imagine. No one wants to come in first thing in the morning to a virtual machine console like this. And because of that, we worked on a concept in our lab that we call the self-healing data center. During the night, your virtual machine snapshots are indexed by Rubrik, and Rubrik's ransomware investigation has begun to look for that suspicious activity. Here you can see that we have an event with high confidence levels and high encryption. These are bad news, especially in the middle of the night when I don't have my eyes glued to the event screen. Thankfully, I have a simple Python script running in the background that's just pulling for these specific types of events. My Python script is connected to the Rubrik Data Protection API and has seen this high confidence, high encryption event and has automatically taken action to do an in-place recovery of the virtual machines that were affected. Can you imagine the look on this ransomware group's face? An operations and a security team at your organization may put something together that is a little more robust than a simple Python script, but the goal is the same. Mitigate ransomware as quickly as possible, minimizing downtime and revenue loss. A more robust solution might look like this. A Rubrik event is sent in real time to our SIM, or Security Information and Event Management System. The SIM sees that high confidence, high encryption event, and then it tells our SOAR, or Security Orchestration, Automation, and Response. So the SOAR will then kick off a workflow to do the quarantine, the recovery, and any other tasks that you have slated for ransomware recovery. Rubrik's API-first architecture allows us to integrate well with systems like Splunk and Palo Alto XSOAR to make the self-healing data center a reality. If you haven't gone through a ransomware exercise before, the CISA has a great ransomware prevention and response document. Rubrik Data Protection alone allows you to automate much of the response tasks. With a simple Python script, we're able to, first of all, identify and isolate the impacted systems through Rubrik's ransomware investigation. We then also have a complete snapshot of all of the affected systems on our immutable storage. We also acted on the most critical systems first by determining the impact and the confidence level. And finally, we were able to restore our critical systems from immutable storage on our Rubrik cluster. Mike, why don't you take us through that sandbox demo you've been working on?
Thanks, Jake. That self-healing demo is pretty cool. Let me walk you through now something I call the Rubrik Sandbox. So what is the Rubrik Sandbox? Essentially, it's a backup validation framework that we've built that runs tests against live-mounted VMs within an isolated environment. Now, these tests are fully customizable. We have some that are available by default. However, you can create and report on your own tests if you wish. That isolated environment that's created can also be, left running, so you can go ahead and get access into that isolated environment through a masqueraded subnet. So you can leave the sandbox up and running if you want to do any manual testing afterwards. So let's talk a little bit about how the sandbox works. So we have a pretty, generic environment here, a pretty common environment. We have a management network within vSphere, as well as a VM network. And then we have a client that's actually running the sandbox script. So the first thing that happens is the script will go out and create a new vSwitch with an isolated port group on a specified host within your vSphere environment. From there, a router gets deployed and configured. Now, the router is configured in such a way that it'll pull an IP from your management network, and then it'll also attach a NIC to that isolated environment that's created. Now, that NIC is actually going to have the same IP as your production gateway, so that way those VMs will be able to communicate and talk to each other. Finally, the VMs are live mounted into that isolated environment. A route gets created on the client, so that's how we gain access into that masqueraded subnet that allows access into the isolated network. Now, this subnet is something you specify, so make sure you aren't using that subnet anywhere else in your environment, or you may get some undesirable networking results. Next, tests get performed. By default, we go ahead and we test for ping and VMware tools, but you can also test for service checks like Windows services running, or port checks, whether you want to maybe confirm that port 80 is open or closed. And then finally, a report gets generated, and then the live mounts are removed. And as I said, you can actually set a configuration file to actually leave that lab up and running if you want to do some manual configurations after the fact. So with that, let's jump into the actual demo.
We'll start by looking at the configuration files we need in order to make it run. First, we have our router configuration file. This basically defines information such as what the router's IP will be, its name, password, any API keys that we need, and where we want to deploy it within our VMware environment. We also specify within the configuration what our isolated network should look like. So what the router's interface address within that isolated network should be set to, which should mimic your production gateway, as well as whether or not we want to enable DHCP within the isolated network. We also have to specify our masquerade subnet. So this is how we will gain access into the isolated network from outside of the router. Do keep in mind you'll want to make sure that you aren't using this subnet anywhere else within your environment, or you may get some undesirable networking issues happening around you. Next, we have our application configuration. This is where we're going to specify some specific configurations around the report that gets generated, like where it should output to, whether or not we want to leave the sandbox or the live mounts running after the tests are performed. We then define what applications we want to test. So we can see here I have my mpreston WinVM that I'm going to live mount, and I also specify a set of local credentials to log into that live mounted VM. Then we specify the tests. So by default, every VM process will be checked for a ping response and for the VMware tools status. However, I can specify other tests as well. As we can see, this one's looking for whether or not port 80 is open or closed, along with checking that a couple of Windows services are running. And of course, we can add as many virtual machines as we want. So I have another here which I'm testing, but I'm only running one additional test on it. We then have our credential configuration. This is pretty simple. We provide credentials into VMware, we need to provide credentials into Rubrik, and then define as many guest credentials as we want. Now these credentials are all stored locally to the client and encrypted. So as far as tests go, we can see them all defined within our tests folder here. We have 4 variations of tests built, but you can essentially define and run your own tests as well by simply placing them into this folder and changing the application config. Basically, if you can write a test in PowerShell to look for whatever and generate a success or a failure, you can place your custom test in here and have the sandbox automate it for you. All right, so let's actually fire up this instance. Basically, we just run the validate.ps1 script and pass it those 3 configuration files, and that's all we need to do. The script will then execute and carry out everything for us. We can see here it's going through and validating all of the configurations that we have, and then making the configurations within VMware to support the isolated networks if needed. So it's already moved past that section and is now live mounting our VMs for us. So while that's happening, let's go and take a peek at the VMware setup. I'll head to the host that I specified here, and if we look at the networking, we can see that we've created a new standard switch called Rubrik Sandbox, and inside that we have an isolated port group. Within that, we can see our router attached, as well as our 2 VMs that we specified. Again, there's no physical adapters attached to this switch, so there's no way for our VMs to actually get to the outside world. If we take a look at one of the live mounts, we can see here that our IP address is the exact same as it is in production. So there's no re-IPing or addressing that is necessary in order to perform this. The VM acts just as if it was restored back into production. So if we head back into VS Code, we can see our scripts completed. So let's go ahead and take a look at the report that's generated. So we get a nice HTML-based report outlining a little bit about the configuration that was defined, and we can also see the individual VMs which were validated and whether or not they passed the various tests that were executed. So we can see we've ran a bunch of tests, and these were all executed from the client that was running the script. Now this client actually accesses these virtual machines through that masquerade subnet. So what happens is we actually create a route to the isolated network running through the masqueraded subnet that we set up in the router config. So we can see the route here. Essentially, any traffic destined to that masquerade subnet will be directed to the router's management IP. From there, the router performs the various translations and allows access through. So we configured this sandbox to stay running after it was done the test. So let's go ahead and ping our masquerade IP for our Windows server. We can see we're getting a reply back. Same goes if we want to ping our SQL VM, which actually gets DHCP from the router. It's also responding. But we can do more than just ping. For instance, let's RDP into this Windows VM through that masquerade subnet. We can actually get directly on that live mounted VM and see exactly what it sees in terms of networking. So we've already P'd to the masquerade address, so let's list out our networking here. We can see it still believes it's in its production network. It still has its same IP. If we send a ping to our gateway, this actually works as the router's mimicking that production gateway for us. We can ping the other virtual machine on its production network address, and it's responding as well. So within the isolated networks, VMs are able to communicate with each other just as they were on the production network. That said, if we're trying to ping the outside world, as you can see, we can't get out. This allows us to say, live mount a 3-tier application within the isolated network and have all of the servers communicating no problem, but ensuring that they'll never get out to the outside world. So we can be sure if we live mount things like Active Directory domain controllers, they won't reach out to their other domain controllers and try and replicate. So that's essentially the sandbox demo. We did 2 VMs here, but as you can imagine, you can automate this, set this up to go out and run regularly and test your backups and maybe leave sandboxes running and set up routes for different people to get inside and perform different tests or different manual validations that they want to do afterwards as well.
All right, so let's talk a little bit about some of the benefits of what we just saw. As I mentioned, it was originally designed for backup validation, and it does that really, really well. But due to the isolated environment and that masqueraded subnet and the access allowing you to get into that isolated environment, you can think of many, many additional use cases. Imagine testing things like 3-tier application upgrades, performing, root cause analysis, maybe digging deeper into ransomware or malware investigation, or things like penetration testing. Basically, all things you don't want to do against your production environment. However, you can easily live mount VMs into the isolated environment and perform these tasks against them.
Working with Rubrik's APIs is incredibly easy. First of all, the documentation for our APIs is built right into the cluster. That means you don't have to Google search around for the specific version and specific API that you're looking for. It's built right in with the latest and greatest documentation. Next, we have a Swagger interface that we call the Playground, which allows you to go and try out any API calls available. Finally, we put our money where our mouth is when it comes to API-first architecture. The Rubrik Code Capture Chrome extension allows you to see in real time the API calls that are being made from the GUI to your Rubrik cluster. This means operationally, you can go and see an API call that you can do in the GUI and then just copy that over to your code. Finally, no good API-first architecture is complete without a great community behind it. Build.rubrik.com is your gateway to get connected with our Rubrik Slack instance to talk to us and other community members. Also on build.rubrik.com, you can get access to our software development kits and code examples and videos. Finally, talk to your account executive or your sales engineer to schedule a meeting with Mike or I to talk about specific automation use cases that you have. Mike, any final words from you?
Sure thing, Jake. I'll just reiterate, reach out. We're here to help. I'm always interested in hearing how our customers are leveraging Rubrik APIs to build unique use cases in their environments. Thanks so much for watching.
Oh man, what a great presentation, an awesome way to kick off the EcoCast. I think we're off to a pretty good start here, Mackenzie. What do you think?
Oh, I'd absolutely agree. I really like the self-healing data center. It's incredible to have such adaptive and complex approaches for data API security. That said, I want to point out that Jess has put up a poll question for you all. We'd love to get your feedback on any additional resources that you would like to explore from Rubrik. Your feedback is really valuable, and we want to ensure you get the right information at the right time. So please do take a moment to answer the poll. If you want to learn a little bit more right away, click into the handout tab and snag the Rubrik handout titled Rubrik for Cloud Native Protection, Exploring How to Automate Backup and Rapid Recovery at Scale Across Your Hybrid and Multi-Cloud Environments. This is a great follow-up to the conversation we just had with Mike and Jake, so be sure you have that downloaded and ready before you head out today.
I love those. Both very hot tips. Make sure you're clicking on the poll. Make sure you're getting that handout. Mackenzie, since you're here with us, why don't you go ahead and give away our first prize of the day? What do you think?
Sure. That means I get to make somebody happy. So right now we have a $300 Amazon gift card, and a quick reminder that you must be present at the webinar to win. So our very first lucky winner here with us today is, drum roll please, Mike Carroll from Ohio. Congratulations, Mike. As always, we will be in touch about claiming your prize after the webinar. And don't forget that there are still 2 more chances to win an Amazon gift card today, plus the best question gift card from each session. But for now, let's keep zipping right along and jump into our next presentation on the EcoCast. And we have quite a treat up next. Hey, Jess?
We absolutely do, Mackenzie. It is time for our very next and last presentation of the EcoCast. The EcoCast today is fast-paced. It is absolutely packed with information. This is our grand finale here, and boy, are we wrapping up in style. I am so happy to introduce you all to our final presenter here on the EcoCast, and that is Kurt Young, Principal Solutions Engineer at Progress Software. Kurt, thank you so much for being here with us to wrap up our EcoCast. We've had a great day so far, and I cannot wait to hear what you have in store with us. So I'm going to hand things right on over to you. Take it away, Kurt.
Excellent. Thanks, Jess. Well, hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. As just said, I'm Kurt Young. I'm Principal Solutions Engineer here at Progress. I came into Progress as part of the Kemp acquisition back in November of 2021. And today we'll be discussing the ability to improve the security of your applications and APIs with the Progress Loadmaster, which was actually part of that Kemp acquisition. So those who know the Kemp Loadmaster, right now it's now the Progress Loadmaster or the Progress Kemp Loadmaster or just Loadmaster, but we'll answer to all the above. So let's just get right into it. So for those of you who are not familiar with Progress, we simply develop the applications you need, deploy how you want, and manage it all safely and securely. We have our own take on the software infrastructure lifecycle infinity loop, right, and how we connect that back to our mission statement around the develop, the deploy, and the manage. We have a few interesting bits of information on Progress and some of the customers that we serve, as well as the developer community that we maintain, all of which we are extremely proud of. So as you can see here, right, we have a very extensive portfolio, right, which has been built from many acquisitions, right, and really the results from our deep expertise in these areas. Most likely many on the call today may be leveraging one or more of these products to support your business. But again, today we're going to focus on the Progress Kemp Loadmaster and how it can help you secure your environments. So those who aren't familiar with Loadmaster, it's a load balancer, right, at its core, right, providing really so much more as an application delivery controller with its ability not only to deliver the enhanced availability and scalability, but also optimization and security. From a platform perspective, Loadmaster can be deployed as a hardware appliance, virtual appliance, or in the cloud. So why the load balancer to enhance the security posture? We always like to highlight what we call this privileged position, right, in which the load balancer sits in the network. I mean, today most application traffic is encrypted, or hopefully customers are encrypting their traffic, whether that application is hosted internal, but most certainly if it's external facing. With the Loadmaster sitting in that privileged position between the users or systems accessing the application and the application itself, this allows the load balancer to have visibility of the traffic that's accessing those backend applications. This is with our ability to decrypt the traffic, which we're optimized to do, look into the traffic, and then take actions on it if necessary. So what kind of actions, right? So we'll have a look into some of these capabilities available on Loadmaster, and we'll look into a few use cases on how it can help you secure those published applications in your environments. So to start off, right, one of the more obvious features would be the web application firewall. The Loadmaster WAF, right, can obviously help protect those published applications against common web exploits and application vulnerabilities. And this is all based on the OWASP top 10 and the core rule set. And now those of you who are maybe not familiar with OWASP, I mean, they're a nonprofit foundation that simply work to improve the security of software. The OWASP top 10 and the core rule set are the most common vulnerabilities, and they are updated based on the greatest current risks out there. These risks we're talking about are things like injection attacks or server-side request forgeries, things like that. Plus, right outside of that, right, customers have the ability to create customized WAF rules for specific use cases. Right, all this will help kind of identify those vulnerabilities both from an inbound to those published applications or outbound for that communication back to the user or the endpoint that's accessing those applications. Now, there's also some thresholds that could be configured on the WAF, such as the anomaly scoring threshold, right, or the paranoia settings that can help, really help avoid those false positives. So we allow those legitimate connections through and aren't blocking things that we shouldn't be blocking. So in addition to those WAF capabilities, the IP reputation to block connections altogether to the application or API endpoint. Right, there's an updated list of known threat actor IP addresses that's provided by Progress, or customers have the ability to block IP addresses manually. Right, that could be at the subnet level or even down to a specific IP address. There's some cases where customers may want to block an entire country. Now, with this approach, right, there are ways around where these bad actors could change the source IP address, either by going through a VPN or even disguising where they're originating from in some other ways. But it's all about this layering of security, right, to help protect the workload being published, right? There's no one silver bullet that's going to protect the application from anything and everything. So it's these layers that we can make these threat actors navigate through, right, which is going to better help us keeping those applications secure. Now, this is kind of related to the blocking of IP addresses. Excuse me, having the ability to restrict access to applications by doing rate limiting, right? This concept of fair and balanced access to the resources of those backend systems by limiting the amount of traffic or connections to the application. So this can be done in many different ways. As you can see here, there's the connections or the requests per second, or maybe limiting the amount of bandwidth, right? That may make more sense for the given workload. So on LoadMaster, these settings can be applied based on IP address or subnet, or even based on some information within the HTTP header, like the host name or path. Now, this functionality is obviously going to help address things like denial of service attacks from these bad actors, but also as well as protecting these applications from ourselves. In some cases where your organization may be developing applications that need access to the API, and either there's some bad code or the application doesn't have the correct configuration and really starts hammering that application, which could easily cause slowness or altogether take that system down, right? So this rate limiting functionality can certainly help in those instances there. So pre-authentication capabilities, or what we call the edge security pack on the LoadMaster, right, can be leveraged. This is obviously depending on the applications being published to further protect them. So setting up the LoadMaster to interact with identity providers to authenticate the access to those backend systems prior, right, to sending that traffic back through. There's several ways to leverage this, right, as well as different protocols. There's LDAP, there's Radius, SAML, OAuth certificates, just for some examples. Right now, obviously, there's a lot of customers that are leveraging Azure AD today. LoadMaster has integration with a solution from within that Azure AD app gallery that really simplifies this configuration or integration, rather. So if you're running across multiple clouds and on premises, you can point all that authentication back to one single identity provider, such as Azure AD. Right. Now, there's also ability to enable multi-factor authentication to even further secure, right, and verify those users accessing the application as well. So, as mentioned earlier, right, in the beginning of the presentation, encryption of traffic using TLS certificates. The LoadMaster has the ability to specify a set of ciphers used to when encrypting that traffic to ensure those algorithms used are secure. Right now, there's obviously some less secure ciphers that are required for backward compatibility, which can make the application more vulnerable. So having the ability to use some of the pre-canned sets within LoadMaster, such as the best practices, or even customizing your own, will ensure that application is using the latest, most secure ciphers to protect those backend systems. LoadMaster also has the capability of leveraging ACME certificates, right, from certificate providers like Let's Encrypt or DigiCert, which allow for that automation of renewing of their certificates from within LoadMaster. So, I mean, back in the day, prior to 2015, organizations would have the ability to get certificates that were, had a 5-year expiration rather than the 1-year certificates that we get today. And then you have that of, Let's Encrypt, right, which are only valid for 90 days. So whether using, ACME or using, standard TLS certificates, having these certificates applied to the load balancer, right, allows for that traffic to be unencrypted. So we can take those necessary actions like, applying those WAF rules or pre-authentication, or even leveraging, content rules, right? Right. If you need, we can re-encrypt that traffic, right, and send it back to those backend systems if you need that end-to-end encryption, or we could send that traffic back unencrypted if you wanted to offload that processing on those back-end systems to optimize the performance. So we'll talk a bit about content rules. Content rules in general are used pretty extensively on Loadmaster, but probably a little bit underutilized when it comes to security. They actually provide some really interesting security use cases for applications or API access. This concept of this zero trust access gateway was actually born based on conversations with a customer that needed to restrict access to their Dell Object Storage Solution, ECS. Now, again, just to be clear, this isn't like a different product or anything. It's really part of Loadmaster. It's just leveraging what's already available in the product. We're just using those content rules in a very specific way to look at things like the who, the what, and the where information within the HTTP header and building policies around it. And again, providing some really interesting scenarios to add some additional security for those backend systems. So in this example, we use this concept of the least privileged access, right? So we have these three security zones from the least secure on top to the most secure there at the bottom. And all of these applications that are running within these different security zones have access to a shared S3 bucket called bucket 1. Now, this obviously can be, some web application or some API endpoint as well. But the what in this example is the method being requested from a get, right, which is obviously just a read, or maybe the application is looking to do a put, a write to the bucket, or even a delete. So with this policy, any applications accessing that S3 storage can only read if they're coming from that least secure network, but can read, write, and delete if those connections originate from the most secure security zone. So this was to prevent, any malicious content from being written to the shared bucket from security zone 1, that least secure environment, and being open in security zone 3, which is the most secure, right, which could compromise those applications that run the business. So there are many different scenarios, right, we can discover based on the unique requirements that you may have in your organization of how we can connect these content rules together to build out some really interesting security use cases. So with all that, right, we could say there's several ways, right, organizations can further secure their environments with the help of Loadmaster, whether it's web application, whether you're talking about storage or some API endpoint. And in many cases, right, customers, are doing this layered approach, right, which is really our best defense against these bad actors, right? So before we get in the Q&A, I just want to add one thing around anyone that's interested in taking Loadmaster for a spin, right? Or you want to download a 30-day trial, we have that available so you can deploy that in your own virtual environment. Or if you like, you can spin up a 30-day trial in Azure or AWS through the marketplace if you want to kick the tires in the cloud there and just really kind of experience the product and see how it can help you with your application publishing or API access. So with that, I think I actually came in a little bit under time, so we can jump right into the Q&A.
You did, Kurt. You were cruising. That was awesome. Thank you for that wonderful presentation. Tons of great info packed in there. And we've got lots more to dig into. I'm going to put up a poll question for everyone out there now. And, I've been changing this up a little bit lately. Think of it less of a poll and more of a wish list, right? This is what would be helpful for you to follow up on the conversation that we just had with Kurt here. And we're going to get into some questions in just a moment. But, we were just talking about that a demo or a free trial, or maybe case studies are where you're at. Maybe you want to, dive right in and just have a one-on-one conversation. Whatever it is that would be helpful for you in follow-up to this conversation, click on your screen right now and get that information handed right to you. So this is hitting the easy button. So your future self is going to thank you. While you guys are doing that, we're going to take some questions, and there is a lot coming in here. Kurt, are you ready?
Yeah, I'm ready.
All right, let's do it. Curious if there's this is a question from Jeffrey here. Can settings be moved from one endpoint to another?
Can endpoints be moved from one? Can settings be moved
Settings.
from one? Settings be moved from one endpoint to another.
Mm-hmm.
Settings from within the load balance. I'm not sure what settings we're referring to here, Jeffrey. Are we talking about settings on the load balancer? Can they be moved across to another load balancer?
Yeah,
If
let's
that's the
go
case,
with that, and Jeffrey can
yeah,
clarify if he has a different direction.
yes, yeah. No, we definitely can move the configuration and settings across different load balancers. Because again, whether you're talking about hardware, whether you're talking about virtual, whether you're talking about cloud, it really is the same load balancer. Load master itself is it's the same underlying load master operating system, which you can back up from one, restore to another, and all that as well.
Perfect. And Jeffrey says that is what he was looking for. So
Oh, good.
hopefully
Okay,
we've got
excellent.
that got that answer for him. Okay. Let's get into this question here. You had mentioned sort of everything kind of being included when you were chatting at the end there. Question coming in: if WAF is included on all Loadmaster models?
Actually, yes. So whether you're doing hardware, virtual, or cloud, WAF is available. Now, the way that we enable WAF on those is we have 3 tiers. We have a standard tier, enterprise, and enterprise plus, and these tiers will determine whether or not, well, based on number one, your support level, right? What kind of support you're going to get, but also the capabilities of the load balancers. So with enterprise plus, you would need enterprise plus for WAF, but you would also get really all of the functionality, right, which would include ESP, which is the pre-authentication capabilities, and then also our global server load balancing for multi-site or multi-region load balancing, or whether you're going across clouds or on-prem and cloud. So the Enterprise Plus kind of turns everything on, but that is required for WAF, but it's across all of the platforms.
We did get a couple questions coming in. Of course, things change very rapidly, and so staying on top of those new and potential threats is really important. One question came in wondering about how often the IP reputation list is updated, and wondering if you can just sort of speak to how Progress approaches staying on top of upcoming threats as well.
Well, yeah, but you could update the IP reputation list. I'm not sure exactly the timing. I guess depending on when we're getting those IP addresses, those new threat actor IP addresses, but you can update them as frequently as you want on the load balancer. How often those? I guess it really depends. I don't know if there's any set amount, but you can update them at any time on the load balancer. But it is, the same goes for the core rule set and the OWASP top 10. So those, like the OWASP top 10, doesn't change all that often. So, but you can update the builds of the core rule set on demand whenever you want, or schedule it.
All right, and in line with that, will the Loadmaster alert when the certificates are going to expire?
Oh, this one I really like. So the Loadmaster itself will not, but actually this gives me the opportunity to talk a little bit about a new product which actually is tied to the Loadmaster, called Loadmaster 360, which provides really deep visibility into the load balancers and applications running in your environment. And what this does, there is a feature within there which does show you your entire, all of the certificates that are deployed across all of your load balancers, and will give you a visual of, when they're set to expire, whether it's within the next 60 days, 30 days, or 90 days, and then highlight that in kind of a red, yellow, green manner, so you know that you need to get on top of it, right? Because certainly expired certificates, as this individual is aware, is a problem and will take down your system. So being on top of those certificate expirations, and we know a lot of large organizations have had that problem before. So that's more around Loadmaster 360, which I would really recommend everyone on the call look into for sure.
Yeah, I really like, I know alert fatigue is a thing, but I really like getting notified so that I don't have to, the things we have in our to-do list, it's a very long list, I'm sure, for everyone out there. So having that kind of peace of mind.
Yeah. And that Loadmaster 360 really helps with that by making these alerts very customizable and making sure that the right people are getting the right alerts and things like that. So you're not getting that overload and just ignoring alerts when because of the fatigue of all of them. So yeah, that's what it's that's our goal with the Loadmaster 360. So really recommend anyone take a look at that.
That's
So
awesome.
thanks for that question.
Customization. Yeah, that's good. Okay, so we're getting close to the end of time, but I'm gonna sneak in just a few more questions here. Speaking of customization, and you were chatting at the end about content rules, we did get a question in about if there's any sort of limitation to the amount of content rules that Loadmaster would support.
Yeah, actually, there is. So, right. So, depending on the complexities of that zero trust access gateway, the limitation of content rules on a load balancer is over 1,000. So, it's 1,024 content rules are permitted. That's a hard limit on the load balancer.
Okay,
So, you
awesome.
do want to take that into account. Yep.
Yeah, that's important to know. That's a pretty big limit, though. That feels.
Yeah. No, I think that's going to cover most of the use cases, hopefully. And certainly, if a customer needed more, we'd love to hear a little bit more about that use case and what we can do to help them with that.
There you go. If you have that unique use case, write in now.
Yes.
Kurt, I love when we get this question because I think it's a great thing to dig into. There's a lot of solutions out there. What would you want people to know that really makes Progress stand out?
Well, I really think it's our portfolio. And I guess when we got acquired, I had the opportunity now to work across a lot of the products within our portfolio. I really think it's the breadth of the technology that we have within our portfolio and how we help customers really is what really sets us apart from anyone. So it's really been great in a lot of the products that we have in our portfolio, like I said, are just the best out there. So, I really recommend everyone kind of go to progress.com, take a look at what we're doing and things that we're working on. We have, always innovation and new products coming out. I really think Progress as a whole, I think from the breadth of technology that we deal with and we help customers succeed with is really our biggest strength.
Well, and that brings me to what will end up being my final question, although I wish we could keep going with this, Kurt, because there's lots of questions coming in and lots of great info yet to explore here. But for anyone out there that is looking to kind of continue that conversation, I want to ask you about sort of first steps to getting started or next steps. And I'm also wondering if I can get you, and maybe this is your answer as well, but I'm wondering if you could dig into the demo a little bit more, because we did get some questions about what a trial opportunity or a test license might look like. So if you can explain that a little bit further as well.
Yeah. So if a customer wants to, kind of test this thing out in their own environment or in their cloud subscription, we do have the 30-day trials available, which are full functioning load balancers, right? So you'd have all of the bells and whistles turned on to get the full experience of the product. Now, if a customer is looking, maybe they don't want to download the product and go through the configuration of it and all that stuff, we actually do, and this I didn't mention before, in Azure, and I don't know if many are familiar with Test Drive. Azure has this offering in the cloud, Azure Test Drive, where you can actually go with just a Microsoft ID and spin up a full functioning Loadmaster. And we actually have a back end, which is also a Progress product, OpenEdge, on the back end that we're publishing. And it actually takes the customer through a step-by-step of using the Loadmaster, going through the configuration. And it's really got a lot of detail and really get that individual comfortable with the product. And actually, as part of that, we have an optional kind of walkthrough, which actually talks that we end up enabling WAF and actually going through a demonstration of WAF blocking some malicious content and things like that. So if someone doesn't want to, or they just want to use that as a starting point, I think you get it for like 4 hours time, and then it just kind of shuts down and you can always go spin it up again. But obviously, it'll reset the whole environment. But for someone that wants to just kind of, play around with it a little bit and don't want to, commit to downloading and spinning it up in your environment, you're more than welcome to use that avenue as well. But if you really want to kind of get a feel for it in your own environment, I recommend you download the trial. Real simple to deploy and simple to use. I think you'll find it very refreshing from a the complexity standpoint of not being complex. It's really one of those things that are really easy to use. So that's what we get a lot from our customers.
Well, I love that, because we did actually get a question today of what do I do if I'm not tech savvy? So I think, there's a wide range of folks out there in the audience today. And sometimes even if you're tech savvy, but you're dealing with people on your team, so it's good when simplicity is good, Kurt. That's what we're going for here.
Oh, yes. Yeah, I agree. I could not agree more.
Well, we've got a lot of questions that are still unanswered. So Kurt, and normally I'd say, can you stick around on live chat? But since we're going to wrap things up, we're going to send all these over to your team. So you'll get a chance to follow up with everyone over email. And I really want to thank you for sticking around and answering some questions, and for a wonderful presentation. This has been a ton of fun.
Yeah. And thanks everyone for the questions. Looking forward to getting in touch and get those answered for you.
And to all of you out there who are clicking on that wish list there, keep that up. So Kurt was just telling you about a wonderful way that you can get more involved and connected with the system. Try it out, and honestly, really, that is the best way, right? Like I understand. And as we were just saying, sometimes that can seem like a heavy lift to download, but there's lots of ways to get involved and try this out. And once you try that out, then you have that clear idea. Is this going to work for me? Is this going to be something that I want to spend some time with, and that's going to fit in my organization? So these conversations, again, they're just the jumping off point. They're just that starting point. And then you get to go and start playing and having fun and exploring on your own. So please do click on that wish list. And if you think you're interested in learning a little bit more about those trials or those opportunities to kind of play yourself, click on that personal demo, click on I'd like to try it for myself, and let Progress know that that is something that you're interested in. You can also click on the handouts tab, and there's a handout in there that I think everyone should make sure you've downloaded before you leave today. This is the data sheet on LoadMaster Edge Security Pack. It is absolutely packed with info. There's a great little visual. It's really easy to take in, and it's going to have all those little memory jogs. So all of the interesting insight that we just got from Kurt, you're going to want to hold on to all of it after we leave, and some of it's going to stay. Some of it's locked in your brain, but some of it is going to fly out the first time someone asks you a question when you walk out of your office. So please do make sure that you've downloaded that data sheet, you've got that saved on your computer, and come back to that after we wrap today, because you'll want that later. All right, so you're clicking on the wish list, you're downloading the handout, you're doing lots of homework. It's my turn to give back to you, and we are going to do a $300 Amazon gift card. Now, a quick reminder that you do need to be here live and present at the EcoCast in order to win. But it's a pretty gloomy, cold day here where I am, so where else would you want to be, right? Better to be inside learning cool stuff and winning cool prizes. All right, our next two winners of the $300 Amazon gift card are Anwar Aziz from California. That's Anwar Aziz from California, and Phil Milhorn of Texas. Phil Milhorn of Texas. So congratulations to Anwar and to Phil. Mackenzie, I'm going to ask you, we always get asked to do a little bit of a recap of our winners. Can you review our whole prize winner list from today?
Absolutely. So first prize winner was Mike Carroll from Ohio. Second, Anwar Aziz from California. And third, but not least, Phil Milhorn from Texas. Congrats, all of you.
It's a good list. Congrats to everyone. Again, we'll be in touch about claiming prizes after we wrap. Plus, don't forget there's that Best Question gift card coming at you from each one of our sessions. We will review all the questions asked after we wrap. So even if we did not get to your question in a live session, you are still entered to win. So lots of good things coming your way besides just a whole lot of awesome content for you today. And so that's going to bring us to the end of our EcoCast. I can't believe how fast it's gone today. But hey, if you are sitting out there and thinking, man, this seems like fun, I would love to have a conversation. I want to talk more about tea with Mackenzie. You want to do some tea and tech segments with Mackenzie? He's in. I can tell you that right now. I'm in to listen. I can't teach anything about tea, but boy, will I'll enjoy it. If you're thinking that you'd like to join in a summit, an EcoCast, a megacast, a webinar, we would absolutely love to hear from you. So reach out via email at connect@actualtechmedia.com. And with that, on behalf of the Actual Tech Media team, I want to once again thank our speakers here with us today from Rubrik and from Progress for making this EcoCast possible. A big thank you, of course, to Mackenzie for joining us. This has been a ton of fun. I'm so glad that I got to have you here with me today. I think I'd like to keep up this segment of tea and tech. Next up, I'm thinking I want to explore zero trust security. What kind of tea goes with zero trust security? What do you think, Mackenzie?
I might have to sit and steep on that. I'll be
But
ready. I'll be ready.
All right, Mackenzie's going to do some steeping. And for all of you out there, my next big thank you, of course, as always, goes to all of you. Thank you so much for joining in, for asking such great questions today. We had incredible questions coming in. And boy, does that make the conversations fun. You know, as I was saying earlier, these are where we start. This is where we pool our information and our insights. And whether that's just observing and listening and absorbing some of the information, or that's asking those questions, or offering an opinion or a thought, or maybe your own specific use case, whatever it is, that is the opportunity that we have to have these collective learning opportunities. I'm going to say opportunity like 15 times. This is what happens when I have a cold. But this is what happens when we get to come together and we get to share our information, share our experiences, and learn from one another. And then we can stay that step ahead that we were talking about at the start. You know, these big opportunities. Oh, there it is again, with API security or with APIs are really exciting, but it's very important to put that thought and mindset towards security as well. Keith said this at the start, and I think this is where we're going to end our conversation today, is bring it on back to the keynote. Keith was saying, hey, do not think of this as set it and forget it. It is no longer okay to come up with a security plan, put it on the shelf, and walk away from it. If that ever was okay, it is no longer okay. So if you're walking away with any thought from our conversation today, it's that these are iterative conversations. These are ongoing. And this is why we have these webinars. This is why we bring everyone together, so that we can all keep reminding each other of those new and innovative things coming out to keep up with those unfortunately innovative threat actors. So I want to really thank all of you for coming, for taking time out of your day, for making the space to have these conversations and join in. And really help the whole community learn from one another. So this has been a ton of fun. I'm so glad we all got to spend some time together today. Speaking of these collaborative learning, I'm not going to say opportunity. I'm not going to say it again, guys. I'm done saying it now. We do have another chance for you to join us, and that is on Wednesday, January 24th at 12 Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific. We will be talking about identity and access management keys to success in 2024. So if you, like Keith, have already started breaking your New Year's resolutions, this is a good opportunity to check in on what your New Year's resolution should be for your organization. Identity and access management, keys to success in 2024. Come back and join us Wednesday, January 24th. Again, that's noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific. All right, my friends, well, that's all I've got for you today. I am going to go sit back with a hot cup of tea myself and rest my throat so I can come back and join you all at a webinar again soon. I hope that you all have absolutely beautiful ends to your day.